We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. No.
Welcome to the special broadcast on United States elections. In this special edition of On Point, we will be joined by multiple voices from United States of America. Our correspondents will provide you on-the-spot coverage, solid ground-based analysis. Our guests will take you through the narrative wars and issues that have shaped up the current elections. In this special edition, we will cover why this election is important for both America and the world. How the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, Joe Biden bowing out of the middle of the campaign, immigration, abortion, peaceful transfer of power, drugs, jobs, wars have shaped the current election. It is a close fight between Democratic candidate Kamala Harris and Republican candidate Donald Trump. But one thing is clear, that Trump has changed the rule of the game for the U.S. presidential election. He is the outsider who has scant regard for the East Coast consensus on important political and diplomatic issues. He has radicalized the American politics and made differences look like enemy positions. Tonight, we will pick up key issues and discuss them. But first, I want to ask, no, is peaceful transfer of such a powerful country in such a closely contested election a possibility today? Now let me introduce you to my panel, my guest who joins me across America. I'm joined by Srini Raghavan, Republican Party leader in Texas. He joins me from Plano. Rajiv Bhateja, co-founder, Desi Blue, Silicon Valley, California. Shashi Bhushan, Mozzarella, founder, Siddha Ashram of North America from Atlanta. And Arun Ayaguri, political strategist and analyst from New Jersey. Thank you all of you. And to my friends, we'll be joined by other distinguished guests. And throughout the week, we will be providing you in-depth analysis and ground reports from the TV9 correspondents from East Coast to the West Coast. Now, without wasting any more time, let me straight away come to Srini Raghavan. What has been the core issue in this election?
To everybody watching in India and in the US, and happy Diwali to everybody. Great question. So I think there are three main issues in this election. And the first one is border security, right? Because again, if you don't have a border, you don't have a country. And that's as simple as that. The second issue is inflation, right? And the economy. The inflation is so rampant. I mean, you look at the prices of milk, all the way up to meat, everything, right? Household, groceries, everything has skyrocketed. What is the root cause for that? Billions of dollars were pumped into the economy by giving everybody free paychecks, free bailout checks, multiple other reasons, right? So that is the second one, the affordability for the common man who's living paycheck to paycheck. And then the third one is a more long-term systemic issue that we have, right? And it is the indoctrination of kids and the downgrade that we have seen in the public education system. A lot of us came to this country for education. That was the main reason why we came here, and good quality of education. Now, when we look at, we have kids in school now, middle school, primary school, and we see that instead of focusing on core things like mathematics and science and English and history, what is being focused on is this woke agenda and transgenderism and can a boy use a girl's bathroom? Can a girl use a boy's bathroom? We don't want to be focusing on that. We want to be the world leader in education again. So those, in my mind, are at least the top three issues, besides multiple others.
Okay, let me go across to Rajiv Bhateja. Rajiv, I asked what are the main issues. Has Donald Trump been able to diversify into new constituencies? Because globally, a lot of people would say that, he's getting support from the American white population. But in this election, do you think that he has been able to push his envelope, or is it back to his same old political, social standing?
Well, he certainly has appealed to a segment of the population that advocates for making America a white Christian nation again. I think that the assault on women's health and reproductive freedom is a very major issue in this election. And immigration is also an issue, but for many different reasons. I mean, Trump has referred to immigrants as vermin. Well, we are immigrants in this country, and to refer to us as vermin is just horrible. He has also said that immigrants have poisoned the blood of America. This is a man who actually married two immigrants, so when he refers to immigrants poisoning the blood of America, I don't think he's referring to white immigrants, the kind he married. So people of color like you and I are not welcome anymore. There's an attack on religious freedom. They want the Bible to be taught in schools. This is a man who, has declared bankruptcy 6 times. His administration lost 2.7 million jobs in this country. 180,000 of those were lost, even manufacturing jobs were lost before the pandemic. And, he advocated for a mob to hang his own vice president. More than half of his cabinet, of his former cabinet, do not support him. His own former vice president does not support him. And a lot of Republicans, notable Republicans, former Vice President Dick Cheney among them, have said he is unfit to run this country. So I think there are a lot of issues beyond, just the usual ones. There's very major issues of character. His treatment of women has been abysmal. He's been convicted of 34 felonies, and he is convicted and found liable for sexual assault, if not rape.
Mr. Bhateja, how is this election different from the last time? Has the template changed, or Donald Trump has reinforced the old narratives?
Every election is unique. This one certainly because of the change in the Democratic nominee. Joe Biden recognized that it was past his time and was gracious enough to step aside. That's exactly the kind of character that you need in a president, is somebody who puts country before his own ego. And so we're very grateful for that. We think that Kamala Harris is capable. She's intelligent and competent. She's a former district attorney, former attorney general for a state, former senator, and former VP. She's extremely knowledgeable about government. And like she herself has said, her only client has always been the people. Donald Trump is the only president, or I should say presidential candidate, who's actually trying to sell stuff. Bibles made in China, shoes, baseball cards, all this nonsense. Mm-hmm. This is just unbecoming of somebody who's aspiring to the highest office in the land and arguably the leader of the free world.
Okay, let me go across to Mr. Shashi Bhushan Mozzarella. I'll come back to you, Mr. Bhateja. How do Indian community, it's a very diverse community when I use the word Indian, and I have not used the word South Asian. How does the Indian community look at this election? Where are we positioned?
Shubh Deepavali, and my regards to all your viewers, and and my regards to all the fellow panelists here. Kartikeya ji, Indian American community is less than about 1% of entire US population, Hindu community or Indian American community. And we pay about 6% of the entire federal income tax. And we don't have a say in the Congress because we have very few representation in the Congress. And Indian American community makes up they are the tipping point because out of the 50 states, 43 states are fixed, which goes to Republicans and which states goes to Democrats. There are 7 swing states, and especially Georgia, from where I am, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. These are North Carolina. These are few states that will decide who will be the next president of United States. And in these states, the Indian American community are in big numbers, and they have the ability to decide who will be the next president of United States. But unfortunately, the record has been the Indian American community do not go and vote. The percentage of going and voting is less than 10% when it comes to all across United States. It is very, very critical that the Indian American community shows up
Mr.
at the polls
Shashibhushan,
and votes.
Mr.
And they can
Shashibhushan,
decide who will be the next president of United States.
may I ask you why Indian community is prosperous? They're achievers, globally known. They have made a mark in the tech world, but they don't vote, you are saying?
Yes, meaning if you see, even in India also, if you see what is the percentage of vote that, Hindus, especially Hindus, if I can segregate that, how many, because right from childhood, there is a perception that, politics is dirty or, it's bad or something like that. It has been very unfortunate that these people don't go and vote. Indian American community, Indian diaspora is the richest. The GDP per household across the world, and especially in United States, is around $125,000 per household in America. But the nearest GDP, nearest community is the Jewish community. It is around $75,000. So you can see $50,000 is the difference between the per house GDP when it comes to that. See, Indian American community, I met all the politicians on both sides of the aisle, and I even met President Trump last Monday also. One of the things that he said, and this is a complaint even by the Democrats also, you guys, you in the meaning Indian American community, you are wonderful. You are peaceful people. You are the nicest people. You are the richest people. But you donate to the campaign and everything. But unfortunately, you don't show up to vote. It is that vote that counts. You can give as much money as you want, but you got to show up and vote. And that is the biggest challenge with the Indian American community. And we have this wonderful opportunity to decide who will be the next president of the United States. And I would urge everybody to go and vote.
Okay. Now let me go across to Mr. Arun Ayagari. Arun, do you think that the wars, though America is not directly involved now, still Ukraine and West Asia, are they an issue in the domestic politics of America? Is it correct? Can you unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thank you for the question, and thank you to all the panelists for their time and News9. So that's a great question, Karthika. No, I was actually pondering on that while others were talking. Normally, foreign policy, if you look at historically, if you look at all the debates or elections, starting from 1960 at least, JFK, foreign policy is a big issue, and always is one of the big debate issue, and it was, and it still is. However, it's been, I personally believe, it's been marred. You guys call it West Asia, we call it Middle East in the U.S. Those issues have been marred by other big domestic issues like immigration, inflation, especially somebody mentioned about inflation. That's a big deal, and that's a plank on which all candidates are running. So normally it's a case. The latest issue is Israel-Gaza, I should say. That was on the radar, but I think, again, talking about issues, there's two types of issues. as an analyst, I tell people, one is the actual issue, the other is the projected issue. Actual issue is the issue which everyday American is facing, right? Projected issue is what the candidates make out of those, or the media makes out of those. For example, immigration is being hyped up, inflation is being hyped up, things like that. So those take center stage. And I personally think the foreign policy issues, the war has been pushed to the backstage. And somebody also spoke about voter turnout. That is true for Indian population. But I would extrapolate that statement and say that the low voter turnout is a systemic American issue as well. In 2020, overall, the American voters, if you look at, the turnout was 66 point something, 66.6, I guess. So that was the highest voter turnout in over 100 years. If you think about it, 66 is like, so you're missing out almost 40% of the voters.
Okay.
It's still projected as the highest voter turnout. So I think the voter turnout is a systemic American issue. And coming back to your question, yes, the foreign policy, I would say, took a backstage on this.
The foreign policy has taken a backstage. So this is a pure play domestic election. Is that correct way to define one aspect of it?
Right. I wrote this. I'm an editor to write articles as well. So I published one of the editorials where I interlinked domestic issue and foreign policy issues. Both are, to be honest, both are intertwined. But in this case, I think I could, at the expense of getting any flack, I can say domestic took slightly center stage in this specific issue, and especially the immigration issue or the border issue, the migration over the border, that has taken a center stage, and rightfully so. If you think about it, the swing states, at least 3 swing states are close to the border. Well, Georgia is not technically on the border, but Arizona, Nevada, those are swing states, and they're on the border, and Georgia is kind of close. So the border issue has taken center stage, and somebody spoke about immigration. I would say Donald Trump is playing very cleverly, very cleverly to the gallery here, because he gives an impression, a perception as if he's against immigrants as a whole, but he panders to some immigrant communities, especially the legal immigrant communities. And we saw the other day the statement he made supporting Hindus. I think it was yesterday or something. So he's very cleverly playing it to the gallery there. But yeah, and I think in this case, slightly, I would say too much, but Kamala Harris is losing edge just a little bit in terms of support from immigrant community. And again, I'm speaking immigrant community at large. Again, a lot of the panelists, and you as well, we're talking about immigrant community, but there's other very big immigrant community, which is a Latino community. We got to talk about that as well, and what their impact is. They're almost 15% of the base, which is second largest community. So yeah.
Okay. I'm joined by Krishna Vankaila from Northern Nigeria and Bob Eramelli from Atlanta. Thank you, both of you, for joining me on this show. Let me straight away go across to Krishna. I would like to revisit this issue of immigration. I mean to say, America is a settler state, Krishna. It's a country of immigrants. It's a country of young immigrants. Young people aspire for scholarship in America. Harvard, Stanford, Ivy League universities. They would like to go there. So when the politics is about the outsiders, how do people who are coming there for education or work are responding to this narrative of an outsider when the American state itself is a settler state, itself is a state which prospered on the merit of the immigrants, either from Europe, Africa, Asia? So the major contributions have been made by the immigrants, from science and technology to nuclear technology. I can just go on and on and on.
Well, first I want to open up by saying happy Deepavali to everyone, and I'd like to thank you for your question. So yes, America is a nation of immigrants. I mean, we were in 1776. It was founded by immigrants from Great Britain when they came here to find their companies in Jamestown. They actually in Virginia, the place where I'm from right now. This is where the United States started, pretty much. And basically, when the politics of this nation kind of become, more hostile, as you're mentioning, towards immigrants, people that are coming in to study, that are coming in legal. Let's forget illegal, legal. Forget the labels for a second, right? People that are just coming in to study and work, when they're being branded as like outsiders, they're being branded as vermin, they're being branded as, people that steal jobs, steal spots. It makes them much less likely to want to come, and study here. But the good thing is that that viewpoint is a minority viewpoint. Overwhelming majority of Americans do not view these people as job stealers. They do not view them as people that steal spots. Overwhelming majority of Americans do support immigrants coming in, and they do recognize the benefits. I mean, immigrants boost the economy. Indian American immigrants, as a son of immigrants myself, let me tell you, as son of immigrants myself, I've seen these working values firsthand from my parents. In the communities that I've lived in numerous communities, dominated by immigrants of all nationalities, Indian, Pakistani, any nation, any continent. And so I feel like, going back to your question, it does raise the temperature.
May I interrupt you?
Yes.
20 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that there would be a serial called Pradeeps of Pittsburgh. I wouldn't have imagined that Indian characters in Netflix and American films to be represented. But I treat them as on the top, not very deep. In terms of daily lived experience, do you think that this narrative of immigrants is impacting the Indian community in America?
It's impacting the Indian community in America. I would say to an extent, yes, because again, as I mentioned, there's a whole, even within the Indian community in America, there's the whole, from India, there's the green card Indians. There's like, they're not citizens, but they're here legally. And there's also, Indian American immigrants who did end up becoming naturalizing and becoming citizens. And so when this whole discussion of like limiting immigration comes in, this whole discussion of who do we give visas to, who do we not give them to, this issue of immigration reform, where we build give more funding for more immigration courts to process these visas, we see like a sharp divide where a certain group of Indians who don't have citizenship yet, who are on visas right now, who are on green cards, they get most impacted, disproportionately, because I mean, obviously people who are already naturalized, who are already citizenship, or they already have citizenship, they wouldn't have to nearly worry as much about these issues, unless it's for their families who are coming in from India, like their parents or like brother, sister, whoever.
Okay, let me go across to Bob Iramili. Thank you so much for joining me. Bob, immigration is an issue even in Europe. And I think that countries are trying to... Bob, am I audible to you?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And countries are trying to redefine legal immigrants and illegal immigrants. Is that an issue in America? Legal immigrants and illegal immigrants?
It is absolutely an issue. When young people like Krishna talk about illegals being, or rather all immigrants being labeled as vermin, that is so far from truth. I don't think President Trump ever referred to all immigrants as vermin. And if he did, it is specifically, he has repeated a number of times that it is the illegals who are breaking the law. The first act of entering the country shouldn't be breaking the law. And as a politician, 4 years back, when I went around, this answers to the first question, how are the Indians participating? And what is their likely outlook? I was running my election about 3 years back. And when I went, this was during the thick of COVID, I had barely about 20% of the people opening their doors, trying to talk to me when I'm getting a message across. This time, I'm getting about 70% of the people opening. And even worse, or rather even startling, is that 40% are planning to vote for Trump. And earlier on, they used to be hesitant. They still are hesitant to put overt displays of allegiance to the Republican Party, but they are coming out in droves, and it is reflected in some of the polls. Typically, Indians vote around 18 to 25% Republican. This time it is going up almost till 35%, and that is a decisive factor which is going to affect the elections. Latinos are breaking towards Republicans. African Americans are breaking towards Americans. And as a city executive, I want to tell you, I get these daily reports from our chief of police. We had about 5 miles from my city, routine traffic stop, 400,000 pills of fentanyl were discovered, stopped during a routine traffic stop. Now that is really alarming to me because I represent one of the richest districts in the Georgia. That means the criminals are targeting, and this richest district is by and large, a very sizable component is Indian and immigrant population. The drug dealer knows very much how affectionate parents are towards Indian children. And these are the people they're trying to target. And if somebody says that this is a transient issue or inflation is going to go away next year, I think I'd like to share a personal story. As a business folks, when I advertise for employees, about 40 people reply. 20 people say they will come for an interview. One guy shows up for interview and I have to hire him. This is the level to which systemically America was built on industry and innovation of its people. If this systemic issue where people are robbed of their innate desire to work and provide for their families, that is going to hurt USA in a long run. And that probably is the reason why I see a lot of immigrants. Yesterday, I spoke to one gentleman from Middle East. His name is Ghaffar. And this man is saying he doesn't like Palestinians being killed by Israelis. And he also objects to the fact that Israeli October 7th was a major tragedy. And he says, what is your opinion? If you get elected, what will you do? I said, listen, when Trump was there was no Ukraine. They had this issue going on for decades. But during his time, no war. There was no war in Middle East. North Korea never, when he was there, North Korea stopped firing their missiles over Japan. And that is critical.
Okay.
And as Dr. Arun Ayagari very aptly said, foreign policy has got a distinct footprint or its paws all over domestic policy and domestic budgets.
Bob, you spoke about the painkiller. It's the opiate epidemic. The world knows about it. It's something afflicting America very deeply. And so is the gun culture. Are these issues in the American election, or these issues have been sidestepped by other issues like abortion, immigration, illegals?
I think, the first part, that is more relevant. Inflation, immigration are the two pressing issues, because as somebody rightly pointed out, even Dr. Arun Ayagari and the first gentleman rightly said, 4 years back, we had eggs at 48 cents a dozen. Today it is $3.16 in the cheapest store. This doesn't hurt Indian population. Why doesn't Indian population, as Dr. Mochalla said, Indian population doesn't vote too much because we are one of the richest minority. Unless gas goes to about $12 a gallon, we really won't come out and start voting and asserting that it is hurting. But at this point, Indians are so comfortable, they are not coming out to vote because of this. But they are aware of what is around the bend, on the horizon, what can go wrong.
Okay. And let me go across to Srini Raghavan once again. Thank you for being so patient, A lot of people in India, they're amused at the fact that the abortion has become an issue. If you look at women's health in India or the South Asia, it's not an issue. High Court very recently allowed a girl to terminate her pregnancy, which is, I think, it was more than 200 days. And they allowed it because she was a victim of a crime. And the court said, you go ahead. So these issues, Srini never make it to the headlines. It's assumed, it's women's right. You have both the perspective of an Indian and Indian American being there. Why has abortion become an issue, despite having some sort of a position on it on the earlier verdict in 70s, which recently got overturned? Why has that happened?
I think again, coming from the Indian perspective is very important here, right? We believe in non-violence. We do not believe in killing for anything, right? Now there are some. So translate that to abortion, right? We don't want to abort, right? That's a no even in Indian culture and even here. Now there are certain cases where rape or incest or something like that, provisions for that have been made, right? And then again, I've seen this whole conversation here and I've been taking copious notes. I mean, it all comes back to, hey, Trump said this, Trump said that, will Trump do this, will Trump do that? What is the Democratic agenda? I have not heard a single word about that yet, right? But again, right, so they are making up issues, right? Or they are hyping up issues, as I think Dr. Ayagari said, right? So this thing about abortion, right? It was decided by the Supreme Court. Now, if you are really interested in understanding what Donald Trump is saying, then Donald Trump is saying, leave it to the states, let the states decide, meaning let the people in the states decide. So I think that is the most democratic way. If there is a certain state which wants to have abortion up to a certain period, wants to make some special exceptions, all that stuff, it makes a lot of sense. So in a lot of sense, he's actually giving power back to the people. So I think it's an issue that is being made up. I think there are more pressing issues when you have drugs flowing across the border, like Bob said, fentanyl killing kids, right? That's a problem. When you have 11.5 million illegal immigrants coming across and completely overshadowing the whole issue of legal immigration, right? That is completely lost in the narrative. It's all about illegal immigrants. Hey, Trump said this, Trump said that. You know, we don't want to get into that. That's a much more pressing issue. Prices having gone up, right? And then this whole education system.
So,
and I think that's
the point you are trying to make
India
is that there's a commonality also. Are you saying that this election is moving around Donald Trump, like the 2014 and 2019 election, it was around Narendra Modi?
Yes.
So Narendra, you agree with him, you disagree with him,
Yeah.
but it was around him.
Playbook.
So are you saying that this election is like that? It's around Trump and not Kamala Harris?
Exactly, right? And it's all about how Narendra Modi ji was blamed. Imagine, rewind back to 2014. He was blamed for like, hey, you did this, you didn't do this, you did that in Gujarat, all that stuff. And look at the last 15 years, how they have been, right? Whereas compared, and it's the same thing that's happening to Trump is Trump said this in 2007, he said this in 2010, all negative stuff. So bottom line, we really need to hear, unless, I'm personally sure that they have no agenda other than to blame Trump, but it is solely becoming a anti-Trump kind of rhetoric from the Democrat side.
Okay, so you are saying that this election is becoming it's running on an anti-Trump rhetoric. Mr. Bhateja, do you agree with this, that this election is revolving around Trump and the Democrats have not been able to define their core in this election?
Well, Democrats have been very articulate about their positions, so I totally disagree with that. They want to do something about gun safety. They want to do something about health care and increase access to health care, something which, by the way, Republicans want to abolish the Affordable Care Act, which would be carnage on the American healthcare system. Republicans talk about immigration, but immigration is something that about illegal immigration. It's something that they have never wanted to do anything about because it's the issue that galvanizes their base. When Trump and the Republicans had both houses of Congress and the White House from 2020 to 2022, they did nothing about the border. They did nothing about fentanyl deaths. And in fact, Trump is the person who tried to stop and succeeded in getting Republicans to stop a bipartisan border bill that Senate Republicans and Democrats came up with. Unfortunately, that would have stopped a lot of illegal immigration at the border. But Republicans have no intention of addressing this because if they do that, they lose an important campaign issue. And talk about inflation. If you think we had inflation now, wait till Trump puts a 60% tariff on imports, which economists all over the country, including in the Wall Street Journal, have argued are going to severely increase inflation because America imports a lot of stuff. A lot of household goods are imported. And if you want to go to your online or neighborhood shopping mall and buy stuff, it's going to be 60% higher because of the imports and because of the tariffs on imports. So this is just total nonsense. These people want to make issues out of things that they don't want to address. And they are actually going to make the inflation and immigration worse because they're not planning to do anything about it. And leave alone issues like healthcare. Healthcare is one of the most expensive resources that in America right now. People actually advocating for medical tourism. India is a big beneficiary of that. And if you don't do something about healthcare costs, it's 17% of our economy goes towards healthcare, and that's the highest of all the developed nations by a long shot.
Okay.
This is really going to hurt people. So when they say the Democrats don't have an agenda, we absolutely do have an agenda. Kamala Harris wants to improve home ownership by giving tax breaks to first-time homeowners. She wants to increase the tax deduction for small business from $5,000 to $50,000. And the Democrats are the only party that want to do something about climate change. And Republicans have consistently denied the existence of climate change, which 98% of scientists have agreed is a big problem confronting humanity. So, there's so much rhetoric. And let's go back to what Trump did in his previous administration. He had very capricious governance. He appointed Rick Perry to run the Department of Energy. If you remember, Rick Perry was a presidential candidate, and he famously could not recall the name of the Department of Energy, and he was appointed to head that department. Trump appointed Wilbur Ross to be Commerce Secretary. Most people don't know that the Commerce Department doesn't actually regulate commerce. It's a department that manages statistics. Wilbur Ross had no idea what this department did when he came into the Commerce Department. So, and Trump, now let's look at one other thing. Trump is a man who gassed his own people who were protesting peacefully in Washington, D.C. because he wanted to go and stand in front of church and hold an upside down Bible. Mr. Bhatia,
this is one point I want every panelist of mine to touch, because I had kept it as the last but foremost, the most important point for me. India is a democracy. America has been a beacon of democracy. War, guns, immigration, economy, healthcare. So these have been part of the American electoral menu for a long time. But what has been the most surprising aspect was what happened 4 years ago was the violence at the Capitol. And this is the question I'm opening up to all my panelists, because Bob wanted to come in. So I'm jumping the queue and going straight to him. Is this a serious concern, even in a country like India, which is beacon of democracy in South Asia? There's no proper transition of power in Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan is the only exception, Myanmar, Sri Lanka. India has been a beacon of democracy. Barring once, we have had an exemplary record of peaceful transition of power. Do you think that this has become a challenge in the American politics, where one side continues to say that they had won the election? So if you raise questions in the process of who gets how many votes, it fundamentally casts a doubt on the entire gamut of organizing the vote. Do you think, is it the biggest challenge for the American democracy? Let me just open up this conversation a bit.
Is it for me?
Yes, to you, Bob.
Okay. I just wanted to let you know, what happened on January 6th is not kosher. But here's what. In Washington, D.C., there were several million man marches, several. Not once did this kind of incident happen. Why? Because people were careful. On this particular day, when 10,000 extremely unhappy people were there, the Speaker of the House, who is responsible for the security, denied on video, saying that she doesn't want any more security, and she accepted that. You know what? That is the way you facilitate chaos, correct? And look, I used to be in the Indian Air Force. If I was leading an 8-aircraft strike into enemy country and I revealed this information to enemy country, in India, I would have been taken to Red Fort and shot. Kamala Harris was raising money as a lawmaker to the people who were burning down police stations. Kamala Harris, on a presidential debate, has said that she needed Joe Biden to be investigated for sexual assault on Tara Reid. Talk about Trump on healthcare. Trump was the guy who said he will pay the lowest for whether insulin or any drug cost. If a drug costs $40 in USA and China mandates it will be sold at $2, Trump said it will be paid at $2. So these are some things which people casually ignore. And yes, put it this way. What about Ms. Kamala Harris's walk back on almost entire Trump agenda?
You know, Bob,
she's now.
My core question was not on the positions that they had taken. My core question was the fact that the American electorate has become so polarized. Let me take this question to Shashi Bhushan. Has become so polarized that it just doesn't trust the process. Is this the biggest issue right now in American election? These visuals, which were taken 4 years ago, shocked the entire world.
Kartikeya, yes, it is deplorable what happened on Jan 6th. And again, it's all about perception. And like Bob rightly said, that, when, Capitol Police is in charge of the Capitol, okay? And Capitol Police is under the Speaker. And at that time, the Speaker refused to release the Capitol Police and have the National Guard come in to do the proper job of protecting the Capitol when they were requested. So, again, this is a past. It is a deplorable situation. Now, let me tell you one thing that could be brewing up a little bit. America runs on electoral vote. Okay. Electoral vote, once they are all decided and everything, one person has to certify that, yes, this person is a winner. By that certification has to be done by the Vice President of the United States. Here, in this case, the Vice President is also the candidate in this case. If the election is close, which it will be, you can see they are projecting, 268 to 270 or whatever it is. If it is the case, now the question is, let's say hypothetically, if Trump is winning, will she certify? Because she is the one, she is the candidate. In the Constitution of America, we don't have a system of, if, in India or wherever it is, if they should recluse themselves when they are when they have a vested interest. Will she certify? That is another question that is going around. So, I hope everybody that I know condemns Jan 6th. It should have never happened, especially in America. But there are a lot of things that didn't come out. If you talk with one section, if you talk to Democrats, they'll give one version. I heard vermin. I haven't heard garbage. Okay. Everybody calls everybody names. That is part of the politics. I think everybody knows that. But whenever we talk about immigration, it is always about illegal immigration that they were talking about, not legal immigration. Indian Americans, we have vested interest because we have a lot of legal immigrants who are waiting for a green card for 20 years, paying taxes legally in this country. Nobody talks about that. That is what we are talking about. Okay. But somebody else is talking about somebody who jumped the fence or walked over the line and they are getting citizenship. That is what we are talking about, illegal immigration. But we can go and dive into each and every problem. Again, the bottom line is it should hurt. It's not hurting Indian Americans yet because, like Bob rightly said, until the gas goes to $12 or $25 per gallon, it doesn't hurt the Indian Americans because we are the richest diaspora. Okay, it is not hurting us. But I'll tell you where it is hurting Indian Americans. It is hurting in the education system, like Mr. Srini mentioned. Okay, because our kids are getting indoctrinated. I'll tell you a very simple example. If you go and take, AP history that kids learn, all right? There are three chapters about each religion. But when it comes to Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma, they have only 2 paragraphs. One paragraph says Hinduism is all about caste system. And the second paragraph says these people practice Sati Saga. That's it. This is what is Hinduism that is being taught in the schools. Education system is hurting us. Okay. That is one. Okay. Inflation is hurting us. So there are various issues that is specifically hurting Indian Americans.
Fair enough.
That is one of the reasons.
Shashi, I just want to come back to the basic issue. I know Mr. Bhateja wants to speak, but let me straight away go to Arun. Arun, what are your thoughts on this issue? Is peaceful transfer of power become the real issue in America? I really want to broaden the debate. I know you guys can speak hours and hours on the issue which plagues America, from guns to drugs, to infrastructure, to foreign policy issue, to economy in the East Coast, the problems in the West Coast. My question is that there is also fundamentally something similar between India and America, which is democracy. That's the similarity we have. And this democracy rests on one thing: peaceful transition. Do you think that something which the entire world witnessed can be repeated again?
Sure. Thank you. I will not beat around the bush. I will give a straight answer to your question. As someone who loves and teaches U.S. history, I love this question. First of all, I saw some slides talking about talking about the election of 1800, which is my favorite election so far.
Yes.
That's when the whole peaceful transfer of power concept came into play. There was peaceful transfer of power. Another instance I want to talk about is, which is not flashing on the screen, is the election of 1876, which is really important, more important than many people think. That's when Rutherford Hayes was elected. So at that time, there was a confusion. And this scenario repeated in 2020, which is why I'm talking about it, is when multiple slates of electoral college voters were submitted to the Congress. There was confusion. That's when Electoral Count Act of 1887 came into play to avoid any future issues. Even before that, there was an issue regarding vice presidential election. Throughout the history of America, vice president was never elected, right? So then, after a certain incident, they made sure that people cast a vote separately for vice president and president to avoid confusion, right? So now coming back to 2020, or 2021, I should say, in 2022, the bill was passed. This is the answer to your question. Well, it cannot answer all questions in the world, but it will answer some of the questions related to peaceful transfer of power. In 2022, the Biden administration passed a law. I'm going to give a different dimension to your question. I'll still answer it. It's called ECRA, Electoral Count Reform Act, I believe. So according to that, it eliminated any possible, again, we cannot solve all the problems because we cannot predict all problems. It eliminated scope for problems which occurred in the past. In this case, if there's an issue with the slate of electors which have been given to the Congress, it has to pass at least a 20% of strength in the chambers in order for it to be debatable. In other words, one person in Congress cannot raise their hand and make it a big issue. It has to pass the 20% muster. That's number one. Number two, the vice president, someone was talking about certifying elections. Vice president is a person who actually certifies elections because he's the president, or he or she is the president of the Senate. Back then it was Mike Pence. Now it would be current vice president, which is Kamala Harris. So she has to certify, regardless of who wins, regardless of she wins, regardless of Trump wins, she would be the person to certify because she's the sitting vice president. So the role of vice president when it comes to certification would be, I should say, ceremonial or just performing ministerial duties. Otherwise, we saw the backlash on Pence for unwilling to certify the elections, right? So and lastly, federal court. They also provide this act, which is more important, and I'm not sure why media is not talking about this, American media, is the direct role of the federal courts. I love constitutional law. I don't practice, but I teach constitution. So it's about the involvement of federal courts. There would be a direct role. This would be sent to a court with 3 judges, one from federal district and 2 from corresponding circuit courts, and then they will handle that. And very quickly, a quick digression. I know you were talking about abortion before. I want to talk about this. There is a fundamental difference between the Indian judiciary, because I love law, between Indian judiciary and the U.S. judicial system. I'm going to be a little critical here. The Indian judiciary is totally opaque, right? The collegiate system, we all know. We all know how the collegiate system works. We don't know how they get appointed. Nobody knows. So on the other hand, the U.S. judicial system is not opaque. It's partisan leaning, but it's not opaque. And the Dobbs the Dobbs judgment, which overturned the Roe v. Wade judgment, happened partly, not completely. One of the factors is the majority of conservative judges. The U.S. judicial system, there is partisanship in the justices, right?
So you can cherry pick. You can fill them with the conservatives. You can fill them with the liberals.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I just want to touch on that, but I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yes, you have answered, because both Krishna, Rajiv, and Srini have raised their hand. Krishna, quickly to you, because I have to wind down the show.
Yes, so I just wanted to bring forward a few points. So they were talking, someone on here mentioned Nancy Pelosi being like in charge of the Capitol Police and all that. This is actually fact-checked by the AP, numerous news organizations. The Speaker of the House doesn't directly control Capitol Security. There's a Capitol Security Board, the Capitol Police Board. And so basically they have to approve all these requests for National Guard deployment and all that. So it's not necessarily Nancy Pelosi's fault that, hey, she didn't immediately, put down the Capitol Policing and she didn't get it. And the moment that she did call for military assistance, it was hours before the National Guard was actually deployed. Because where was Donald Trump? Where was Donald Trump when his vice president was asking him on the phone, please deploy the National Guard? For hours and hours, he was out of action. And so that was just something that I had to bring up. The second thing was about, someone was talking about this only illegal immigrants. On the debate stage, was this last month? I'm losing track of time, but on the debate stage, we saw a candidate for president say Haitian immigrants, legal immigrants, let me remind you, these aren't even illegal immigrants. These are legal, law-abiding citizens. He claimed that they were eating dogs, eating cats. He was blatantly just defaming them on live television. I don't understand where the thing that this is only against legal immigrants comes from. This can be shown towards any immigrant group. This isn't just against illegal. This rhetoric can be used towards any immigrant group. And the third point, because you said you wanted to get through this fast, so I'm just going to go really fast. The third point is someone also mentioned, Kamala Harris is the vice president. We don't know if she's really going to, how do we know that she's going to really do the right thing? But I think Dr. Ayagari, I really appreciate him for bringing the election of 1876 and 1800. But let's look super recently to the election of 2000, right? George W. Bush, who was the governor of Texas at the time, versus Vice President Al Gore under Bill Clinton. That election came down to one state, the state of Florida, decided by a few hundred votes, I believe. I don't have the exact number on the top of my head. But basically for a month, up until I believe it was December 7th of 2000, there were all these lawsuits here and there, both parties, both campaigns saying, oh, we're going to win, we're going to sue. Another party saying, oh, we're going to win, we're going to sue. December 7th, the Supreme Court intervened and said that, no, the final count is final. George W. Bush won Florida, so he wins the presidency. Okay. What happened immediately after? Al Gore conceded. Al Gore, he lost by a hair. If you're looking at it percentage-wise, he lost by a hair. He certified his own loss in January of 2001. In January of 2017, when Hillary Clinton lost, Joe Biden was certifying Donald Trump's victory. What did he do? He told when there were even some Democrats saying, "Oh, we shouldn't certify this victory," he said, "No, quiet. We're certifying this victory." Right? There is a precedent that has been set in American politics that there should be a peaceful transfer of power. And that hasn't been tested in modern history up until 2021, when Donald Trump sent a crowd to the Capitol to raid the Capitol the day of the counting of the electoral votes. And when he refused until the 11th hour...
I'm really falling short of time, I really have to close this conversation. Srini, to you, and then to Rajiv. Srini.
Yeah. So absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, Dr. Bateja keeps bringing issues, that I just have a couple of questions, right? They had a complete majority. The Democrats had a complete majority, Senate, House, they had the president, vice president, everybody, right? Why didn't they remove the tariffs if they are so, against it? And actually, there is regulation right now where Biden is actually trying to increase the tariffs from 25 to 50% on electronic goods. So do you like it or do you not like it? First question. Second question, you talk about immigration and how you want to resolve it. Every time a bill comes up, on the face of it, it says legal immigration. But then,
Srini, I just want to know your view on the peaceful transition of power. A lot of people in India would really like to know that. I know these are issues important for you, but peaceful transition of power, to me, if you ask me, maybe this is a sort of a partisan or sectional perspective, but it's very important because I fundamentally think that these debates are happening in India also, that the EVMs are flawed or, the voting has not taken place properly. So it's not about the EVM. Right. You're saying that the election has been rigged. When you say election has been rigged, then, then you are actually questioning the basic structure of the democracy. I'm not saying that people haven't tried to rig elections in India. They have done it. The punishments have happened, but To say there is a systematic issue is a different thing altogether.
No, let's rewind. Let's start with India. Rewind back to the 1980s and rewind back to the state of Bihar.
No, I just want to keep it to America right now. I just want to, Srini, I just want to keep it to America right now.
So what?
I just want to keep it to the America right. Do you think that the peaceful transition of power will take place? Or do we expect the violence which we witnessed to happen?
No, I don't expect violence. I think it will take place because this time the citizens are involved. We are going to every polling booth to ensure, because at the end of the day, it's our duty, it's our elections. So we will go there. We are going there to every election booth. We have observers in there, at least in the state of Texas, to make sure that none of the hanky-panky stuff that the other side is always used to. We are trying to minimize that. We are voting early. So we are doing everything in our power because at the end of the day, it's our election, our future.
Okay, fair enough. Rajiv, to you. You only have 2 minutes. Then I have to really close the discussion.
Trump consistently denied that he lost the election in 2020. Okay? And he lost 60 court cases, many of them with Trump-appointed judges, and still claimed that he had won the election. And if you listen to him today, sometimes he says, yes, we lost. Sometimes he says, no, we won. So clearly this man is incapable of accepting defeat. And that's why he moved that mob on January 6th to go attack the houses of Congress, which is kind of like the parliament building in India. Many members of his former administration, including his own vice president, do not support him for that reason. This man is unfit to lead. He has no moral compass. It is only about his own ego. And you know, talking about what happened on January 6th, that is likely to happen again in a different way this time, because he is going to try and mobilize his supporters to protest violently, just like they did on January 6th. It's going to take a different form, but I guarantee you he's going to try and incite violence again, because he cannot accept, his ego cannot accept a loss.
Okay. I would say thank you to all of you for joining me and taking time out of your schedules for this conversation. And I never use the word discussion on the elections which are taking place in America. And these elections are important, not only from the perspective of how it affects the people in America. It's going to have a wider ramification with that. Whichever administration comes in, it will affect the American foreign policy and subsequently the entire world. Thank you and good night.
A little dose of incompetent people, you know.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
Yes. This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump.
You say Harris, nobody knows who the heck we're talking about, right?
Democracy's biggest stage.
What are the key issues dominating the U.S. presidential polls? I'm Hamza Kambazai, coming to you with all the updates from Washington, D.C.
Take a look at what happened